So remember, on this stream, we've been talking about the sale of arms to Israel for a very, very long period. We've continually discussed how we think that us arming Israel is essentially making our government and our country complicit with violations of international law, because it's been clear from the start. And now, of course, we've seen a very small number, 8% of arms licenses suspended, because the Labour Party say that this is their way of ensuring that nothing is used offensively that might implicate us in violations of international law. One thing that has come out from this very specific department is the revelation that's just come out yesterday that David Cameron was given the same advice that has been used for David Lammy to suspend 30 arms licenses to Israel back in February, was already been given the same advice on the risk of the UK being complicit in violations of international law, and did nothing. And did absolutely nothing. The source said that what has emerged in the memorandum is similar to what was being sent to the government from at least last February onwards in various drafts by Foreign Office advisors, much of it linked to the deteriorating humanitarian position in Gaza. But what has been eventually published is in much less strident language. The tragedy has to be considered. How many lives might have been saved if the arms export licenses had been stopped then and not in September, and what the potential ripple effect might have been on how other countries would have reacted in ceasing trade. So not only is our own potential implication important here, but what message us actually taking our international obligations seriously might have been in terms of setting precedent for other countries to have changed their positions as well. The source added, the advice being sent through to the Foreign Office was clear. The breaches of international humanitarian law by Israel as the occupying power was so obvious there was a danger of the UK complicity if the licenses were not withdrawn. A member of the previous government said its legal advice was in some respects similar to that published by Labour concerning the treatment of detainees in humanitarian aid, but insisted the legal advice was iterative and changing, added it never explicitly said that ministers needed to suspend arms sales to avoid breaching international humanitarian law. So this is very clear. The same advice that was given to David Lammy that led to a very small but not insignificant number of arms licenses being suspended is the same advice that was given to David Cameron. So much so that they were described as obvious. It was obvious that they would be a risk of us being complicit with violations of international humanitarian law, and David Cameron did absolutely nothing. So this is potential complicity in war crimes from David Cameron. Not the first time, of course, but there's always a second time for everything, eh, Dodgy Dave? So on top of all of the lives that we can attribute to his government throughout the austerity period and beyond, now we can also talk about his complicity in Gaza as well. The catch to all of this is this shouldn't be new news. This should not be something that should be a revelation 5 months after the fact, when this advice was given in February and we're now being reported by The Guardian from the legal advice published by Labour 5 months after the fact. The reason why this shouldn't be a revelation is it was literally reported in March of this year from leaked recordings by Alicia Kearns, who is the chair of the Foreign Affairs Committee, had told a drinks reception in London that the government had been given legal advice and that it wouldn't release it. We already knew that this was the case. The press reported on it and it just went away. It just went away. These clear indications that we are being lied to by our own government about our country's potential complicity in war crimes was reported one day and forgotten the next. This has been the case for months and months and months and months and months, which is why the Labour government's prevarication on this has been so galling to me, and why only 8% of these licences being rescinded isn't enough as far as I'm concerned. The fact that this has been treated like a revelation yesterday, when we knew about it from leaks 5 months ago, just shows you how little people care in our press and throughout our society broadly, in our political discussions and our political class, about the lives of Gazan civilians and our commitment to upholding the international liberal rules-based order that we keep saying that we care about, except when it's our allies. We knew this already. Answering questions, she said the Foreign Office has received official legal advice that Israel has broken international humanitarian law, but the government has not announced it. They have not said it, they haven't stopped arms exports. They have done a very few small sanctions against Israeli settlers, and everyone internationally has agreed the settlers are illegal, that they shouldn't be doing what they're doing, and the ways in which they have continued and the money that's been put in. Arms exports cannot be granted if there is a clear risk the weapons could be used in a serious violation of international humanitarian law. On Saturday, so this is still in March, she stood by the comments saying, I remain convinced the government has completed its updated assessment on whether Israel is demonstrating a commitment to IHL, and that is concluded that Israel is not demonstrating this commitment, which is the legal determination it has to make. Transparency at this point is paramount, not least to uphold the international rules-based order. This woman is now a shadow foreign affairs spokesperson for the government. She's now in the shadow foreign office. This is somebody who broke the news, who leaked, who already stated that this was a lie, that the government was lying to us back in March of this year, and we've done nothing since, until now. On top of this, in the Foreign Affairs Select Committee, the same Alicia Kearns, chair of the Foreign Affairs Select Committee, in questions to the Foreign Minister at the time, David Cameron, asked him very plainly whether or not they'd been given advice that Israel was breaking international law. This was his response.
And just Lord Cameron, just to clarify, so you have received no advice at any point from any government lawyer that states that Israel is in breach of international humanitarian law?
That's not what I said.
No, that's why I'm asking you to clarify.
Yes, well, I'm going to give exactly the same answer all over again, which is what my role is, right?
I'm not interested in the role, I'm interested in the legal advice you've received.
Yes, well, the legal advice I've received is consistent with the fact that we have not changed our export
It's not about arms
procedures.
exports. It's about international humanitarian law being upheld when it comes to aid, when it comes to the way in which airstrikes have been prosecuted, everything else. We're one question on arms exports. We've moved from them in any realm, in any respect. So you've never had a piece of paper put in front of you by a Foreign Office lawyer that says that Israel is in breach of its international humanitarian commitments under international humanitarian law.
Look, the reason for not answering this question, I can't recall every single bit of paper that's been put in front of me.
And just Lord Cameron.
When asked directly by the chair of the Foreign Affairs Select Committee, what was his response when we now know that he'd already been given advice that Israel had broken IHL and that our legal commitment to uphold international humanitarian law should be to suspend arms licenses? Oh, well, I can't recall every piece of paper that's been put in front of me. Throw them in the bin with all of the rest of the people who are complicit in this shit. From Iraq until now, our state has continually shown that it cannot be trusted to uphold international law and be part of the rules-based international order. Cameron, into the bin with Blair where he belongs. Disgusting. I already had an incredibly low opinion of him. This is beyond the pale. And we now know from the official government sources that is true rather than just leaks. Hey there, if you enjoyed the video, make sure that you like and leave a comment. That helps the video out in the algorithm. If you subscribe and ring the bell, it'll let you know when I go live. I stream every day on YouTube and Twitch. You can also follow all of my socials down in the description. And if you want to support me in a more financial manner, there's a join button for membership to just 99p to be a member on YouTube, as well as a Patreon, and there's some merch there as well. And hopefully I'll catch you on the next video. Take care.